They just chanted Mao's slogan, "Rebellion is justified." Mao said, "Revolution is not dinner party. It is violent."
What can history tell us about America's current cultural moment?
You are born white, then you are oppressor. You are born guilty.
In this episode, I sit down with Xi Van Fleet, a Virginia mom who made headlines after publicly comparing the rise of critical race theory to China's Cultural Revolution, which she experienced firsthand.
The result of the Cultural Revolution is the total destruction of the society.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Xi Van Fleet, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Well, such an honor to be invited to your program.
Oh, that's very, very kind of you to say. You know, I've been kind of watching you a little bit since June when you went up to the mic at the Loudoun County School Board and had some strong words to say about trends that you were seeing that reminded you of something you experienced back in China, the Cultural Revolution, in fact. I guess I want to kind of dig into this whole realm. This is our opportunity to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into what you saw and what you're seeing now, and actually what's happened since, and a little bit of your background. You're from communist China.
Yes, I am, yeah. So I grew up in communist China, and I left China for America when I was 26. And when the Cultural Revolution started, I was a first grader, and I spent my entire school years in the Cultural Revolution. And after that, I was sent to the countryside to work in the fields, to receive re-education from the peasants, like many urban youth. So I always say I had a full experience of the Cultural Revolution.
Well, and it just as an interesting aside, so, and then I guess a couple of years after you were sent into the countryside, so to speak, but the whole policy actually changed, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Thank goodness. It's my third year, and Deng Xiaoping was in power. And he said, yeah, we need to start it, to send youth to college by examination. Before, it's not by examination, it's by good behavior, and it's by chosen by the party leaders. So he said, now it's by your ability. So I was able to pass the examination and went to college to study English.
Why don't we start with a little bit about what the Cultural Revolution was, and then we'll get into the current day. But like, what was that? And then you can tell me what it was like to be there. Yeah,
the Cultural Revolution is it's very important to understand why there was a Cultural Revolution, and I did not understand until much later. So there were a lot of disastrous policies that Mao implemented before the Cultural Revolution, and one of them resulted in the famine of some 40 million people starved to death. And so there was some kind of a criticism inside the party, and there's some questioning about his leadership. So he felt like his absolute power was in question. So that's the reason. That's the reason he started the Cultural Revolution, to basically remove his political enemies. And political enemy up and down. And then the number one was the president of China, Liu Shaoqi, and it goes to the bottom of local government. They all need to be removed. And he wanted to put his own people in every level. And that's the reason and the means they used to get the mass involved. And then the first one was to unleash the Red Guards. So those are the indoctrinated youth in colleges and universities. And it started in Beijing and then quickly spread over. So the Red Guards were mainly school kids.
So okay, since you said the mass involved, so like just like kind of the masses, right? To basically employ them in his quest. So, and the Red Guards, how were they indoctrinated?
Well, that started from day one. So as soon as the CCP took over power in 1949, one of the first things they did is to get all the school teachers together because they were the teachers of the old China. So they were giving intensive communist training to learn about Marxism, to learn about the communist ideology. And they were not even giving weekend off. They have to be trained day and night until they passed examinations before they could go back to the classroom. So they were there to teach now the Marxist and communist values and ideologies. So ever since then, the educational system is an indoctrination mill, ever since then. But it was during the Cultural Revolution that we get to see the full display of what those indoctrinated kids were able to do, were capable of. And so to that, the Cultural Revolution was a really stunning experience for people who are in that revolution and for people later to see. It was something that if I tell young people in China today, and most of them say, I just could not believe that happened.
Well, tell me a few memories of what you saw happen.
I was a first grader, so I was 6 or 7. I had one semester of kind of normal education. And then, to me, my memory is just overnight, and then the school class stopped, and I see the red, it's called the big character posters everywhere. So those are just people write down whatever criticism, that's the Chinese word for it, but it is really denunciation and attack of teachers, of school administrators, and of each other. And so anywhere there was a wall space, there's a big character posters. And so I was just too little to really understand the content. But what I remember is the chaos. And so in the classroom, and there is the teacher wrote a note in the blackboard, said, no school for 3 days. And that stayed there for 2 years. No school for 2 years. Yeah, so when I went back to school, that I was in the 4th grade. So I missed the 2nd and 3rd grade, no school.
Fascinating. So just, you basically got a semester, did you say?
One semester,
one semester, and then school went out.
Yeah, just out. And universities, I think they stopped for like 5 years or longer. Yeah.
And so who were these Red Guards? Were they the sort of the extra committed youth, or how did they come about?
Everyone was a Red Guard. If you're in high school, and even in elementary school, we're just too little, but we're called Little Red Guards. But they were all organized by themselves because Mao openly support them. And they just chanted Mao's slogan, "Rebellion is justified." And Mao said, "Revolution is not dinner party, and it is violent. So go ahead, do your revolution." So with Mao's approval, no one could stop them. So the first thing they did is they dismantled the law enforcement and the court system. So they just did whatever. They even make up their own laws. So one of the things they were told is get rid of those people in authority. And who are the people in authority? The first are the teachers. So many teachers were struggled against, parade around, and many were beaten, some to death. Yes, and so because I was in the elementary school, just like 7-year-old and up to, 10, 12 years old, even that, eventually it gets violent. And but not, I don't think anyone killed by elementary school teachers, but people were killed by middle school kids. Yeah, there was no consequence. And because of that, they just made up their own rule. I heard this not from me, but heard from some other, another person who witnessed the beaten to death of a man who dare to withdraw 1,000 yuan from the bank because the Red Guard said that if you have that much money, you are oppressor, you are exploiter, so you are counter-revolutionary. So they just did that. No consequence. Even today, their crimes were never prosecuted. Those people who died in vain, forgotten, except by their families.
And so in these, you're talking about this struggling, and so I guess these posters were also sort of encouraging people to join in these struggle sessions. Just explain what that is exactly.
The struggle session was just total confusion to me because there was no school, and we just went out, and every day there was a struggle session of someone. Mm-hmm. And one day I was out with a friend of mine, and so usually different. Some just use truck to parade the people and with the sign of their name crossed out. And so one day we were there and we looked, we're stunned. That's my friend's father. And so it's like I don't know who, and it's just so many people were struggled against. And some were very violent. And I went to one struggle session of the governor of Sichuan province. That's where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of far from, he was standing somewhere high, and then so everyone could see him, and the Red Guards were reading out his whatever criticism or denunciation. And total chaos.
It's incredible to hear about it from someone that really experienced it. Of course, I've read a lot about the Cultural Revolution, and then so but you did get older in the process. This lasted 10 years.
Yes.
And so, what about towards you were seeing things presumably a bit more clearly towards the when you were 15, 16, or it was just this mass chaos all the way through? I don't think I ever clearly saw anything. And so I remember that I was sent to the countryside. By then, we heard enough horror stories of youth working in the countryside and work with the peasants. And I did not really want to go, but I had to. So a lot of times, actually, I was blaming myself that I was just kind of weak, that I just can't, that I need to be toughened up so that I can contribute meaningfully for the socialist cause. So a lot of times, it's not like I saw clearly that this was unjust. That's the power of indoctrination. You feel like, I'm just so weak. I really need to be toughened up by those peasants and do this hard labor. I see. So you're imagining that the people who were running the struggle sessions were the tough ones or something like that. Yeah. Wow. I know the indoctrination was very powerful. And so the violence and then the kind of struggle session, that lasted about 2 years. Actually, by the time I went back to school, it was kind of calmed down. But Mao just did not know what to do with all this Red Guards. That's what he did, to send them to the countryside. So that's their rewards of doing all this damage for Mao. Right. And the other part, and I have to mention, was the sort of destruction of history, actually, right? Which is that's a central feature. That's the central feature of the Cultural Revolution. And so Mao told the Red Guards and everybody, we should get rid of the 4 olds. The old ideas, old thoughts, and old tradition, old custom, and old habits. What are they? They are the traditional culture and civilization. So for you to get rid of it is to find historic places such as temples and anything, basically anything old. So all the Buddhist statues were torn down, temples destroyed or burned, and what I witnessed is Red Guards going door to door to raid homes. And so they would just go to homes and took out anything that's old. Old vases, antique furniture, anything. They would just go take them out and just burn them or smash them. And I remember
and this whole street was just a mess of things destroyed and the people howling and crying, those homeowners. And because that's what the Red Guards wanted to do. And everyone was asked to go over your home and just find out those old items to hand it over to the authorities. And I remember my mother was looking really hard to find something that we can consider bourgeois or consider old. So she managed to find a bottle of old perfume to hand it over. And cancel culture just also, they demand that you can't wear a certain hairstyle. You can't wear anything that is kind of fashionable. All this is condemned. And I witnessed Red Guards cutting young girl's hair off because that girl had a hairstyle that was not approved.
So, I mean,
it's insane. It's absolutely madness.
So this is, I mean, as you described this is sort of unleashing people's worst inclinations, right? Or
yeah, I think this is because they feel like they could do it. So they did whatever. Just like that Antifa, that's why it's just looks so familiar to me. When I saw Antifa and the BLM activists, they knew they could do it. Same as the Red Guards. They knew there's no consequence. There's no consequences.